Hello and welcome to Manga 96, and today we have the review of One Piece manga chapter 1038 titled Kid and Law vs Big Mom. This was a really interesting chapter with many developments. What is currently happening with Zoro is definitely the most intriguing development of the chapter, which has the potential of being just a gag on Oda's part, but it also could be a serious development with severe consequences for Zoro. Izo finally got an important role to play after his involvement on the roof. Hopefully he'll do better than Drake. And lastly, Kid and Law's last stand against Big Mom, although it seems that the objective changed from then defeating her to now stalling her so she can't interfere with what is happening on the roof. Now let's save all that for later and start at the beginning of this week's chapter. The German cover series continues with a bang of a development, which is quite surprising as usually Oda takes his time in the cover stories before something interesting happens, but not in this case, as in this cover we learn that not everyone did manage to escape Toto Land, as we see that both Niji and Kyonji are captured in Mondor's book at Cacao Island, with Owen watching over them and Pudding being worried about the well-being of her former would-be brother-in-laws. This development is really interesting because you'd expect that those two will escape somehow in the cover story, but going from the previous two cover pages, they won't be escaping because the German will try to rescue them, as they don't have the means or desire to do so. As it stands now, the only way I can see those two escaping is if either Pudding tries to set them free, which the cover page could indicate that, or something that was heavily speculated about for a long time happens, and that's that the Blackbeard pirates attack Totoland while Big Mom is away, with the ensuing chaos setting those two free. Either way, with this development, this cover story promises to be one of the best cover stories to date. Moving into the chapter, we start with a fight of the century between Raizo and Fukurokujo, where we see that nothing much has happened since the last time, as they are still both locking each other. However, Fukurokujo has finally caught fire, so I'm assuming that the next time we see the fight between those two Kage level ninjas, it will be the finale of this battle for the ages. We briefly move to see what Jinbei is up to after he clobbered the big kitty cat. We see that he decided to help the samurai to escape the collapsing castle with him holding the debris so the samurai can evacuate. This is definitely a noble move on Jinbei's part. Where I would have preferred if he went and assisted Brook in protecting Robin rather than him playing firefighter for some no-name fodder samurai. Then we move to see Chopper, who is finally back in his normal form. This scene just serves as a good segue to see what is happening with Zoro, and we have something to see when we move to his location. We see that Zoro has regained consciousness after his fight with King, but he has bigger worries now, as a cloaked individual is standing before Zoro with a big scythe seemingly ready to attack him at any moment. There is a close-up of this individual where we see that it's a skeleton, so by the looks of it, the Grim Reaper has come for Zoro's life. Now, is this really what is going on? I wouldn't discard the option of this being a genuine Grim Reaper who has come for Zoro's soul, as this is One Piece after all, so Grim Reapers actually existing wouldn't come as a surprise. However, as tempting as this option is, I don't believe that this is the case, as Zoro could be just hallucinating, or this could be just a visual representation of the drawback sitting Zoro, or it could be just a prank by Brook. Regardlessly of what is happening right now to Zoro, help is on its way as we see Frankie rushing to Zoro's location, and he is not far away, so if this really is a genuine Grim Reaper, it will first need to go through the super cyborg Frankie before it can take Zoro's soul. Then we move to Izo, who managed to take care of all the fodder in the attic. However, he is visibly injured. It is not clear if this wound is something he received from Kaido back at the roof, or if it's a fresh injury from the fodder that he fought in the attic. For his sake, I do hope it's the former. If not, it's not looking good for him as he ran into the two CP0 members that are after Robin. At first, their interaction is peaceful, as the CP0 guys really don't have the time to deal with Izo, so they try to just walk past by and not deal with him at all. This might have worked if they didn't mention that their targets are the Straw Hats, so now Izo has no intention of letting them go. Does Shizu have any chance of beating the CP0? I don't think so, especially considering that Oda made a point of showing how injured he is in this chapter. That being said, I do hope that he can at least take one of them down, to show that the former commanders of the Whitebeard Pirates aren't pushovers. Ultimately, I don't believe that Izo can take both members of CP0 down, but I'm hopeful that he can take at least one down so that we don't just get a repeat with what happened to Drake. We then move to Yamato, who has finally reached the armory, and in the nick of time, as the fire blob is about to touch some bombs. So Yamato freezes those bombs with her powers. However, this is not the solution, as what it does is only prolong the inevitable, as the fire blob starts to thaw the ice. So Yamato's only choice is for her to beat this fire blob. Yamato attacks the blob without any effect, apart from getting its attention, and there we learn that Kazenbo isn't just a fiery blob, but a sentient being which can shape its body so a hand appears from it. So it can attack Yamato, who blocks the attack. My guess for the reason as to why Kazenbo can speak and change its shape is that Kanjuro is inside it, as we haven't seen Kanjuro since he drew this thing, and there were several scenes in the attic since then. That's the most logical explanation as to why we haven't seen him since then, and it will be quite poetic, as the first time we saw the traitor he was depicted as a blob, so for him to end up in a literal burning blob at the end of his life, it will be the ultimate death for him. Then we move to the part of the chapter that is the reason as to why it's called the way it is, as we focus on the Kid and Law vs Big Mom fight for the remainder of the chapter. With the first thing we see is the seemingly defeated Eustace Captain Kidd and Trafalgar D. Waterloo before the biggest of mother, Charlotte Linlin aka Big Mom. We see how both Kid and Law are down with Kid's eyes being widened out, showing that he is unconscious. We have some members of both crews in the vicinity who try to rush to their captain's aid, but they are just met with Hera's lightning instead, further cementing the gulf between the Straw Hat crew and the other Supernova crews, where everyone else is useless except their captains and Killer as the sole exception. I'm not saying that every crew should be super strong, but at least be useful enough that it doesn't look like they're just liabilities to their captains and nothing else. I know that Oda doesn't have the time to focus on every crew, but at least he could have given the Kid Pirates and Heart Pirates a little more screen time so they wouldn't look so embarrassingly weak compared to the Straw Hats. Anyway, we move on from the capabilities of the Kid and Heart Pirates to Big Mom trying to get back to the roof so she could end this raid with beating Luffy, where she's interrupted by Law, who is using his awakening to stop her. I might have missed something, but why does Law's Kikoku change its length when Law uses Kroom? I went back to chapter 1030, and while it wasn't as apparent as in this chapter, Kikoku did change length in that chapter. So my question here is, why can't he do this when he's using his awakening? I get that his awakening has an inside effect as opposed to an outside effect that his root has normally. So I could see how this could lead to him being able to manipulate Kikoku. But the question then is, if that really is the case, then by using his awakening, Law can manipulate his sword's structure. Then why can't he do the same to Big Mom, as clearly it's shown that Law's awakening does have a significant effect on her. So if we are going by the logic that Law can manipulate Kikoku's structure while awakened, then he should be able to manipulate, for example, Big Mom's head or arm where his sword is stabbing her, and not just use shockwaves to hurt her. While I can sort of see from where the sword manipulation could be originating, it's still confusing, so I hope that Oda addresses this in some way in the future. Moving on, Law uses his Kroom to shock Big Mom to her bones, with her letting out a scream visually on the level of the scream after Brook broke Mother Caramel's picture. After the attack, the Steel Beam homies try to crush Law to death, where they begin to be magnetically attracted to the other guy that is still in this fight, and that's Kid. For the last scene of the chapter, we see how Kid is using all the metal in the vicinity to build a bull-like Megazord. While Kid is preparing for the attack, Big Mom is shocked that he is still standing, with her wondering that Kid's desire for her head is driving him so far. On which Kid disagrees as he acknowledges that at this point this fight against Big Mom isn't fought to take her down, but rather to stall her so she can't interfere in Luffy's fight. As Kid himself believes that Luffy vs Skado is about to end with Luffy's victory, as Skado took too much damage throughout all those fights since the raid began. With Kid using his bull Megazord to ram Big Mom, with him and Law once again confirming that their goal is to not let Big Mom go to the roof, we end this chapter. Now we learn some interesting things from the dialogue on the last double page spread. The first is that Luffy vs Skado will end soon. Oda essentially used Kid in this scene as a proxy to tell the One Piece readers that indeed we aren't far from the conclusion of the Luffy and Kaido fight, with him giving us the reason as to why Kaido will lose. With the reason being all the accumulated damage from all the fighting that Kaido suffered throughout the raid. While the reason of Kaido's defeat was obvious prior to this statement in the chapter, the statement that his defeat is near is a bit surprising, as that could mean that Kaido could possibly be defeated in the next 5 chapters or so. But the biggest surprise in this finale is the changing of Kid's and Law's objective from defeating Big Mom to just stalling her as much as possible. Which is Oda's way of telling us that they won't defeat her, which leaves us once again with a big question mark on what is going to happen with Big Mom in this arc. If she isn't defeated by Kid and Law, I doubt that Luffy will be in any shape to fight her after his fight with Kaido, which could then lead us to the real reason as to why Oda included her in this arc. As so far, her inclusion wasn't justified for the most part with what she has done. All in all, this was a great chapter of One Piece, full of great developments, from Zoro meeting the Grim Reaper, to Izo facing off against CP0, and the reason as to why Big Mom was included in this arc could be revealed soon. And that'll be all for this video. If you like this video, leave a like, leave your thoughts in the comments below, or subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content, as well as other manga content, and until next time, take care.